Hey everybody, welcome back to Let's Play Katawa Shoujo Part 19. And today, Hisao and Hanako resume their pool game. Let's go. I grit my teeth a little. I was pretty good at this game, and it's frustrating to have deteriorated so much. I step back and let Hanako take her turn, glancing towards the counter where Lilly and Akira are sitting. They're talking busily between themselves, and seem to be having a good time. I turn back to Hanako as she takes her shot. With the same face as before, she lines herself up and sharply pushes the cue. Just as before, she sinks the ball she was aiming for. It drops into the side pocket more cleanly than her last, though. It looks as if she's getting a bit more into the groove of the game. Nicely done. She hesitates for a moment, and begins to address me without turning her head.
The orphanage was nice. It felt a bit like Yamaku does, and the staff was really kind. But as the years went on, I realized something. I was different.
It feels strange to hear her speak so candidly about herself. She's audibly forcing the words out. It reminds me of when she insisted she tell me about the fire. Hanako must feel that she has to tell me of such things, if I'm willing to tell her about my own past. Her grip on the cue tightens as she continues to speak.
Most of the children there were up for adoption, just like I was. But unlike me, they gradually left, one by one. By the time I went to Yamaku, I was among the oldest children there. For a while, I helped with some of the younger children, but eventually...
I lay a hand on her shoulder. She's forcing herself by now.
It's okay.
She looks mildly surprised for a moment, but then nods before setting down her cue and turning towards me.
Do you really think so?
Yeah, I think so. Even while Lily's away, I'll be around to protect you, right? Hanako looks at me for a long time, and I'm taken a bit off guard. Her expression hasn't changed from before, still looking somewhat maudlin, and silences between us aren't unusual. I think it's the fact that she's holding such prolonged eye contact that makes us feel a bit odd. It feels as if she's judging me. It's a very strange, vaguely uncomfortable feeling. Hanako?
I understand. Thank you.
She smiles and looks away a little, but it feels stilted. Hanako isn't very good at faking emotions, and this is no exception. I move to the table and take my turn to try and distract myself, but it doesn't seem to work. Does she think I'm not up to the task of helping her? Is she disappointed in me? I'm probably overthinking this. While her silences are just an accepted fact of life by now, sometimes I do wish she'd speak more. With a thud, I send the white sphere careening down the table into my target.
Ah!
Hanako sees what's happening just as I do. The ball hits hard, with the straight ball I had intended to sink veering off towards the 8-ball. Sure enough, as both Hanako and I look on and bite our lips, they connect and the black ball rolls leisurely into the corner pocket. All I could do is sigh. It looks like Hanako is smiling again, though, so maybe it wasn't for naught. That was an awful shot. You win. It seems I'm getting pretty rusty after all this time. Hanako bends down and begins to shoot the remaining balls into the closest pockets. I almost ask if we could play another game, but a quick check of my watch confirms that the night is getting pretty late. Lilly and Akira appear to be still drinking at the counter. Seems like we'll have to drag them away.
Hisao?
I turn back to Hanako, who's still looking over the pool table shooting balls. Her voice sounds different from before.
Here for you as well.
I suddenly find myself blushing. It's only natural that she'd respond this way, given what I said earlier, but it's still a shock to actually hear it. Just what is my relationship with this girl? I want to protect her, to make her happy. I'm not really sure that it's something like love, but I don't think these are the same kinds of feelings I have for Lilly either. I feel sorry for her, having gone through so much in her life. Her parents died in a house fire, and she lived in an orphanage for much of her childhood. I can't even imagine that kind of life. But I feel like there's so little I could do for her, especially now that Lilly is going to be leaving the country. Hanako and I finish tidying up the table and cues, and pick up Lilly and Akira on our way out of the club. It feels like something changed between Hanako and me. I can't quite place what it is, but Hanako is acting differently now. I feel like we're further apart, if anything. So, you enjoy yourselves? Hanako and I both nod and agree. The game was good. And we both did learn more about each other, so it's an honest answer. Lilly appears to be a little distracted. Worried about the trip, Lilly? She pauses before sighing and smiling weakly.
A little. It means quite a bit.
The comment earns her a clap on the shoulder from her sister. Hanako smiles back too.
You'll be okay, Lilly. I hope you can enjoy your time over there.
Thank you, Hanako. I'll try to. It will be nice to be back with my family, after all, no matter for how brief a time it may be. With that, the four of us begin the walk to the car park where Akira's car is. We continue to talk between ourselves, but it's mostly just small talk. And another day is done. Cue this very happy music. Right then. Are you taking the bus, Lilly? Lilly motions to a large suitcase standing beside her. I'll have to take this with me, so I've booked a taxi. It'll meet us in the school gates in about 5 minutes. Ah, I see. You did it again, Hisao. Lilly reaches down and feels out the handle of her suitcase. Its weight causes her some difficulty, so I quickly offer to take it myself. That is awfully kind of you, Hisao. She has no qualms about accepting, and I end up picking it up. It's not what I'd call light, but it's not exactly heavy either. I don't think I'll have too much trouble carrying it. Well, thank you then. We should hurry, though. If the taxi leaves, then it will take quite a while to book a new one. Are you ready, Hanako?
Yeah. Let's go.
We rush to the gate as fast as we can, only to find that the taxi has yet to arrive. Well, nothing like a bit of exercise in the morning. The nurse told me that I should be doing that. I think he probably had other things in mind, Hisao, and probably with more regularity. Do you intend to be helping people with their luggage every day? I guess not. Looks like we've got a bit to wait anyway. How long should we wait for the taxi before calling them again? I would say another 10 minutes, but they've never let me down before. There's probably just a little traffic. Okay then. So, how long is the flight to Scotland? About 16 hours, if I remember correctly. It's a bit hard to tell with the changing time zones.
So long.
It's now that I realize Hanako's been unusually quiet, even for her. She doesn't handle stress well, so she's looking really uptight. Yeah, I can't imagine being on a plane for that long. I've only ever flown on a short family holiday up north, so it really is quite hard to fathom. If Hanako spent so much of her childhood at an orphanage, she's probably traveled very little, let alone flown. It's not too bad. I'll spend most of it either asleep or catching up on my English. I hardly use that here, so I need to refamiliarize myself with it a little.
Will your accent be a problem?
I wouldn't worry about that too much. It may be an issue initially, but I should be fine once I get used to it. We all move to sit down on the small bench beside the school gate in silence. Strangely enough, even though I know that Lilly is going away, I can't think of anything to say to her. Lilly is a reliable person, so it might be because she isn't the one that I'm thinking of most. Lilly might not be able to see it, but Hanako's chewing her fingernails nervously. I move to talk to her, but can hear an engine straining up the hill before I get the chance. Ah, I think the taxi is on its way.
Well spotted, Hisao. I only just heard it as well.
A small wave of pride washes over me. To have noticed something at the same time as Lilly must mean that I've become more aware of my surroundings. Anyway, we won't have to call the taxi company nor worry about missing Lilly's train. Once the taxi stops where we're standing, the driver rolls down a window and leans over. After confirming that yes, Lilly is the same Lilly Sato that booked the trip, we sort out her luggage. The driver opens the trunk of the taxi and takes Lilly's suitcase, with Lilly climbing into the back seat as he loads it into the trunk and slams it shut. After getting back into his seat and shutting the doors, he waits for us to say our farewells.
Have a safe trip, Lilly.
Take care of yourself. Hanako looks understandably downcast, and that much is obvious even in her voice.
Of course I will. I'll be back before long, don't worry. There will still be another person here for you too, won't there, Hisao?
Yeah, of course. I turn and smile to Hanako, putting my hand on her shoulder. She only manages to keep eye contact with me for a couple of seconds, her cheeks red all the while, before turning back to Lilly. See you, Lilly.
Goodbye.
Lilly gives her farewells to the both of us with a fair measure of reluctance. Without further ado, the driver starts the engine once more and they begin the journey down the hill and towards the airport. The two of us stand at the gates for a long time even after they've disappeared from sight, not really knowing what to do. So, what do you want to do?
I don't know.
Alrighty, very, very important decision gate. What you want to do here, you do not want to call it a day. It will lead to the bad ending. And I refuse to go down that route. So we're going into the city with Hanako because we want to show her that we care and we want to take that next step. The bus stop standing by the school gates like a mute sentinel puts a strange idea in my mind. Do you want to head into the town and look for a bookshop or something? We have the rest of the day free. It's a long shot, as Hanako doesn't like going into the city. I count the fact that we managed to get her out there even when it was so dark as a small miracle, but I genuinely want to spend more time with her. Anyway, she's likely to just refuse and go back to...
Okay.
Really?
Really. Let's go.
I can't work out why Hanako has decided to agree with me, but I'm not about to ask her to change her mind. Stepping off the bus, I immediately noticed that a lot of people are around us. In hindsight, it should have been obvious. Of course lots of people will be downtown on a Saturday afternoon. Hanako retreats close to my side, and I can feel her hand clutching my arm tightly. Her body is held against mine, and her head is bowed so low that her hat hides most of her scarring. So, where shall we go? A bookshop? Hanako's present and my other general living expenses have pretty much drained my budget, but I should be able to afford a few books. There's something I try to reserve a few funds for anyway. For a second, I think Hanako didn't hear me, but then I looked to my side and noticed her nodding almost imperceptibly.
Okay. Do you know of one?
Actually, I do. We passed a few when Lilly and I were looking for your presents. Hanako's expression clouds a fraction. I've got to remember to stop bringing up her birthday.
You both spent a lot of time?
Or maybe I misjudged the situation. We wanted to make sure we got the right present, after all. Hanako smiles and blushes a bit. It's a small treasure when she does. Anyway, there should be a bookshop just up ahead. Do you want to check it out?
Sure.
The crowds start to build as we head towards the bookshop along the raised walkways. Hanako latches her other arm onto me as well, making our progress a little slower. As we walk, the sound of the traffic makes me think of a possible distraction for her. I was wondering, Hanako, have you thought yet about what you're going to learn, about when you're going to learn to drive?
Driving?
Yeah. You're kind of lucky in a way. There aren't a whole lot of students in Yamaku that are allowed to drive. It's not the best topic of conversation, but I want to try and distract Hanako from the situation. She's really highly strung right now. Then again, all I've really done is make her feel awkward, since she's probably never thought about it. I wish I hadn't said anything. Before long, we are before one of the bookshops Lilly and I passed by during our search. What kind of self-respecting bookshop closes on Saturdays?
Bookshops don't make much money anymore because of the internet. Maybe they just had to close over weekends?
She seems pretty knowledgeable about technology. I guess it's a pursuit that would lend itself well to someone who enjoys solitude. Huh. I guess that makes sense. It's easier to find books online. Anyway, it looks like this idea is shot. Anything else you'd like to do?
If it's not a bother, could you show me where you brought my presents?
Sure, not a problem. It's not far from here. I head off in the direction of the store, only half sure of its exact location. I don't want a repeat of the last time, spending half the day walking around aimlessly. Here we are, Othello's Antiques.
It's small.
Well, yes, it took Lilly and I some time to find it.
Can we go in?
I don't see why not. It's open. Hanako pushes through the door and enters before me. Once again, the store is empty, save for the store owner. His face drops a little when he sees me. Oh, you're not here for a return, are you? Wait, that's not the girl you had with you last time. No. We're not here to return anything. We were just in town and wanted to have another look in here. The store owner considers this for quite a long time. I guess he's not used to high school students coming to his shop on a regular basis. Might this be the friend you bought gifts for? That's right. They were presents for her. The store owner turns to Hanako, who freezes on the spot like a deer caught in the headlights. He moves to address her, but stops before doing so, looking a little taken aback. He catches himself staring and looks to the side, addressing us indirectly. His expression is awkward and tense, as is his entire body. I want to be mad at him, but I know full well that I had the same instinctive reaction when I first saw her. First surprise, then curiosity, then an awkward look away as I dealt with what I had seen. Hanako looks less panicked than before, but I think the feeling she's giving off now is worse. It's not anger nor annoyance. If anything, it's one of apology. You're lucky there, young lady, to have friends that care about you as much as they do.
Thank you.
If I hadn't spent so much time with Hanako, I wouldn't even have realized that she said anything. Then again, the store owner's mumble was hardly clear either, thanks in part to being directed away from us. Hanako strikes out into the store, gazing in wonder at the various items on display. She finds the doll section and spends lingering minutes studying each and every one. It's a side of Hanako I've only barely been introduced to. I was astonished when Lilly said she liked dolls, and even more so to find her collection sitting on her dresser. She looks a little better now that she's distracted and out of the store owner's sight, but I'm still quite put off by the whole experience. I might have my own problems, but I've never had strangers react to me like that, as if I was something completely alien to them.
This is a nice shop.
Yeah, it's not what I expected. Do you want to buy something?
I didn't bring any money.
Well, we could always come again. Now that I know where to find it, that is.
We can?
Of course. We can come here as often as you'd like.
Thank you.
You don't need to thank me. I almost forgot where this place was. I don't really think either of us completely believes in what we're saying, but rather we're just repeating what we think we should say.
Can we go back to the school now?
Sure thing, let's go. As we leave for the bus stop, I see the store owner peek through the curtain at the back of the shop. I'm not really sure what that glance he gives to her says. It feels a bit weird, and the fact that Hanako didn't see it is both a relief and a bit frustrating. Hanako and I stopped walking once we reached the concrete area between the dormitory buildings. There was barely a word said between us on the way back from the city.
Well then, goodbye.
Do you want to have some tea or something? How about a game? Hanako shakes her head embarrassedly.
I'm tired. Maybe later? I've got homework.
She sounds a little depressed. Hanako obviously does want to do more, but I suppose she would have a bit of schoolwork to catch up on. She's missed a few days of lessons. Homework. Thanks for reminding me. I've got a stack to do as well. I guess I'll see you tomorrow.
See you, Hisao.
Before I can say goodbye, Hanako has turned and begun walking towards the entrance to the female dormitory building. I look at the door she disappears through for a bit before going off towards my own dorms. Today was a tiring day. And, oh boy, we're nearing the end game, folks. We have just entered Act 4. Act 4, Scars. Oh boy, oh boy. I woke up, took my pills, had a nice shower, quickly slipped on my uniform, ate a tasty breakfast, grabbed my bag, and headed off. All as per my usual daily routine. It was only after arriving in class that the normality of the day was thrown off. After taking my seat, I watched my classmates trickle into the room over the next hour, until every empty seat was eventually taken, other than Hanako's. I could never get used to the idea that she just doesn't show up to class every now and again. It feels all the more worrying now as well, given that Lilly's left. As Muto continues to drone on, I find my gaze flicking every so often over to her seat, as if she might appear there any moment now. Nobody else seems to care at all about her absence, but they have little reason to. Hanako being absent from class, after all, is perfectly normal, or at least it was. Her attendance hasn't been all that bad from what I've seen in my time here, but it was apparently much more spotty beforehand. This is also an ominous time for her to be gone. It's the day before her birthday, and my suspicions are starting to rise, after the breakdown she had in class when it was mentioned. An increasing amount of my thoughts is taken up by how I can help her, but in the end I feel like I can't do anything. The bell heralding the beginning of lunchtime rings out, shaking me out of my thoughts. A collective sigh of relief can be heard from the class, though Muto looks quite put off. He dislikes being interrupted in the middle of his exciting lectures after all. Just when I'm wondering what I should do on lunch break, given that Hanako and Lilly aren't here, the solution presents itself.
Afternoon, He-chan.
Afternoon, Misha, Shizune. You both look as bright as ever.
She-chan wants to know if you'd like to have lunch with us today.
Sure, it'll be good to have some company. The cafeteria hums with activity, much like my old schools did. Yamaku is different, though, in how strangely civilized the lunchtime rush is. What one would expect to be an unruly mob chomping at the bit to get to the serving area is rather a neat and organized line. There's a small amount of jostling, and people's heads are often craning around to check on what's happening up ahead, but it's pretty subdued. This is due, no doubt, to the very serious rules regarding such matters in this school. The same strict discipline is observed when students move in the hallways, or come to and from their dormitories and the school gate. While the reasons for it may be slightly off-putting, I've come to quite like this sense of order that's enforced in the school. I didn't really like being told by Shizune and Misha to get their lunches, though. I feel a little used as I take a seat at the table where they're sitting, plunking their food down in front of them. Sweet bread and strawberry milk for Misha, a bowl of ramen and juice for Shizune. I have a sigh of relief as I put it all down, after the significant difficulty I had carrying it all, in addition to my own lunch.
Thank you.
Misha claps her hands together before popping open the wrapper and digging it into her bread ravenously. Shizune simply gives an appreciative nod before giving her steaming ramen a stir and blowing on it a little to cool it down. I open my own lunch, another packet of sweetbread, and take a bite before washing it down with some juice. The bread is very sweet, so much so that I end up forcing myself to stomach it just to get the experience over with. Midway through, I decide to take a break from the difficult task and ask what's on my mind. So, I'm guessing you two had a reason to drag me down here? You two seem to always have an ulterior motive, after all.
What are you saying, He-fam? We both have a motive.
Her mouth is full of sweetbread as she speaks. It's a pretty unpleasant sight. Shizune looks a little grossed out before going back to eating her ramen. I wait until Misha swallows what she has in her mouth before speaking again. You're not buttering me up to make me work with you after school?
Nope.
Not trying to extract information from me that I might not want to give?
Nuh-uh.
Fine, you win. I guess you just wanted to eat lunch with someone as intelligent and handsome as me, then.
That's it, He-chan. You got it.
Shizune looks unimpressed as Misha finishes signing her conversation, and sucks in the last of a long noodle as she signs her own thoughts.
She-chan says you shouldn't be so suspicious of us. She's just doing her duty as a class representative, after all.
How is she, are you doing that? As much as I hate to admit it, it looks as if I still have trouble communicating with Shizune. It should be a simple matter of keeping eye contact with her and addressing Shizune instead of Misha in my speech, but when somebody else is doing the talking for her, it's a surprisingly difficult task.
It's the class representative's job to ensure everybody's doing all right in class, isn't it?
Not really. Wait, how is making me get your food ensuring that I'll go well in class? Shizune huffs and adjusts her glasses disapprovingly.
So this is the thanks we get for giving you companionship during lunchtime?
That's a total dodge of the question. Wait, hang on. How did you know that
Lily's away and Hanako is absent, and since those two are the only people you hang around with, you also made it kind of obvious to see.
Ouch. I may well have done so, but she didn't need to rub it in. Maybe this is payback for before. Right. Well, thanks. I appreciate it. And that isn't sarcasm. The two nod and we get back to finishing our meals. It feels a little embarrassing to be accompanied just because they noticed I was lonely, but it isn't as if they're strangers either. It isn't long before I finish the last of my bread and start on the last of my juice, and as I do so, I find my mind wandering back to what I'd been thinking about before the two interrupted my train of thought. It feels like I'm the only one in the class that so much as acknowledges Hanako not being there. It felt like this the other time she skipped class, but now it's even more acutely annoying. Does nobody care if she's happy or not? Have they just written off any possibility of helping to make her better? Even Muto doesn't try to keep her in class, and I'm still not wholly convinced by his reasoning.
Hey, Hee-chan, is your juice past its expiry date?
What?
You were pulling a weird face, like this.
As if it were needed, Misha mimics my own expression. Her exaggeration makes me grimace, though Shizune at least takes some amusement from it. I was just thinking about Hanako.
Oh?
Misha's interest is piqued, and so is Shizune's once my words are interpreted for her. I'm just worried about her being so absent so often, especially now, though, with what with her birthday coming around. The memories of that incident in class are still fresh in their minds. Their faces alone are telling that much. Do you know anything about Hanako? Anything that might help? Misha shrugs and looks to Shizune, who mulls on this for a while.
The only people she's ever talked to for more than a sentence or two are you and Lilly.
Shizune may not be able to convey Lily's name in a derisive tone of speech, but I feel as if it comes through in her sign language. The effect is lost, however, after Misha's interpretation.
There are a couple of things we know about Hanako as student council members, thanks to the records that pass through our hands, but we can't say anything about what's in them.
Understandable. It sounds a lot like the nurse's patient confidentiality. Every time I find someone that knows something about Hanako's past, it turns up being a dead end. The only way I'll ever find out is by asking her. I don't know if she'll let me know such things, but if it's for her sake, I have to at least try.
Don't worry about it, Hee-chan. It happens every year, after all.
That doesn't remove my sense of worry at all. I still feel a little at fault for what happened in class, but this feels like it goes further, even without their confirmation of that fact. Misha notes my troubled expression, her own usually happy and reassuring face dropping.
Everyone has problems they have to deal with, right, Hee-chan?
Yeah, I just wish I could help Hanako more with hers. With that, the conversation trails off on a depressing note. Eventually, Misha manages to pick the mood back up through her usual bright and bubbly antics, but my mind remains focused on Hanako. I'll go check on her later. I make sure my door is locked after dropping off my school bag. The dorms are quiet. Muto kept me occupied longer than I expected, discussing my studies after classes ended and pressing on me some worksheets to give to Hanako almost as an afterthought. Absorbed in thought, I'm late in registering the shadow that appears in front of me. Looking up reveals the owner of said shadow. And you know what? That shadow's going to stay a mystery until the next part, folks, so stay tuned for Let's Play Katawa Shoujo, Part 20, when we'll discover who this person is. Anyways, see you then, peoples.